I was in a Korean Doomsday cult for almost a decade. My name is Adam, and I run the YouTube channel, Finding the Alternative. So this Korean Doomsday cult that I was a part of, it's called the World Mission Society Church of God. And some of their core beliefs is they believe in the second coming Jesus has already come. In fact, he actually passed away in 1985. They also believe that there's a God the Mother figure and that she is in the flesh living in South Korea as an 82-year-old woman. They also enforce the religious observance of the Passover, Sabbath day, and they institute tithe on their members, so you need to pay 10%. Any deviation from these ordinances will result in you, unfortunately, having to go to hell. They also have been known to influence couples into getting abortions. They're also known to shun ex-members. I'm sure you watching this, you're probably familiar with the Jehovah's Witness. Even if you aren't a Jehovah's Witness ex-member, they're very famous in the Christian world for how much they shun people. Once you leave that organization, they cut you off from the only support group you had, because remember, in these cults, you can't talk to your family. Your family could be under the influence of Satan and it could potentially lead you outside of the truth. Also, you can't talk to other religious leaders because other religious leaders are the devil, right? They're leading the whole world astray, etc. And you also can't talk to any worldly people, any secular people like a psychiatrist or anything like that, because they don't have the truth and they can't sustain you spiritually. So what does that leave you? That only leaves you the organization itself that is your support group. But what happens when you don't believe anymore? You end up being kicked out of your only support group that you have because you already burned those bridges with everybody else. The WMSCOG, or the World Mission Society Church of God, operates in the same way. And honestly, I wouldn't be making this video had they not implemented these heinous practices. Because what these practices do, and you as a viewer should know this, it creates a very harmful, destructive mental anxiety and emotional anxiety. Because imagine you come to find out your religion is wrong, but not only that, when you deviate from the status quo that the cult puts in place, they kick you out of the only support group you have. So where do you go? What hope do you have? And so that has led to people turning to alcoholism, turning to drugs, and turning to other unspeakable things, right? That really damage a person's soul, that really damages a person's health, and could even lead to unspeakable acts being committed on oneself. So the reason I'm making this video is because you as a viewer, whether you're an ex-WMSCOG member, a current WMSCOG member, or someone who has a family member in the WMSCOG, you need to know how dangerous this cult is. If they had not implemented these practices, I wouldn't need to be making this video to spread awareness about it. So this video, one of the things I want to show you, especially if you're a current WMSCOG member or an ex-member, or even if you're a family member of a WMSCOG member, this is some important information that I think you would want to know. So you see this book right here? This is called the Green Book. It's called The Mystery God, Spring of the Water of Life, written in 1980 by An Sang-hong. And I apologize about the state of mine. Typically I keep my books in better condition, but my cat decided to pee on it. So one of the things I wanted to explain with this book is its importance. And we'll get to why we're going to explain about this here in a minute. But this book is, you can think of like a key, because according to WMSCOG doctrine, the Bible is sealed and the truth contained in the Bible is sealed. So the root of David, An Sang-hong, had to make an appearance on this earth, and he had to reveal the truth by writing this book. So you can think of this as a key, and the Bible itself is a lock. And how do keys and lock work? Obviously, to unlock the Bible and reveal its secrets. So you can kind of think of how important this book is to the organization. Now, there's a problem with that. Because if you open to the table of contents, there's 35 chapters in the Green Book. However, here is the original book that they actually don't give to you. And as you can see, there are actually 3 missing chapters. Why? Because there's 38 chapters in the original Green Book, which I actually call the original Brown Book because it's brown, but I digress. So why is there 35 chapters in the Green Book you and I have, or had? But there's 38 in the original. One might have to ask, why are there missing chapters? And so let's talk about that a little bit, and let's explore why there might be missing chapters. I feel like understanding the 3 missing chapters is a very important key to the puzzle, if you will. So what do the missing chapters contain? Well, if you look at the original, chapter 1 of the Green Book, as we'll call it, we actually see that prophecy of An Sang Hong saying that the world is going to end in 1988. Then if we look at the original chapter 36, we also see that An Sang Hong was supposed to ascend alive with the 144,000 with the second coming Jesus, which kind of puts it, it connects those two chapters really well when you understand An Sang Hong's theology. However, when you apply that to the current WMSCOG theology, it creates a lot of problems. So naturally you can see why they would remove these 3 chapters. So why do they remove these 3 chapters? Well, if you ask them, you're going to get one of 2 responses most likely. The first response would be, well, it's already been fulfilled, which if you understand the context of the 3 missing chapters, doesn't make sense because it clearly was not fulfilled. And also too, if we understand that a little bit deeper, we would have to remove a lot of the Bible if that's the case because Jesus fulfilled a lot of the prophecies already. So why is it we still have those books in the Bible if Jesus already fulfilled them? Why wouldn't they hide them from us? So it doesn't make sense when you apply it to a broader scope of understanding. Now, the second rebuttal they'll give is, well, Mother said so, right? Basically giving license to do with the Green Book whatever she pleases. Now, that becomes a problem because you don't see that in Scripture either. You might be thinking of the 7 thunders where John was about to write and then God said, do not write what the 7 thunders spoke. But that's different than John publishing his gospel and Jesus coming back and saying, actually, you need to remove 3 of these chapters that you wrote because we can't have those out there. That doesn't happen in the Bible. So you have to ask yourself a genuine question that you might not like the answer to. Why are they hiding these 3 chapters? Another thing that I wanted to bring up is I remember being in the church and we had a bunch of educations about Shincheonji. Now, Shincheonji, in short, is another Korean Doomsday cult that believes in Lee Man-hee as the promised pastor, the new John, basically the Messiah, if you will. But we're not going to talk too much about that right now. The point is we learn more about the history of other organizations, especially like Shincheonji. But yet, when it comes to our own history, being in the WMSCOG, we're so unsure about it. We know of a handful of dates: 1948 baptism, 1964 establishment, 1985 his death, etc. But that's really all the dates you have. What happened in between? No one has any idea. And in fact, if you don't know this, there are already 4 different branches that come or claim authenticity rather from An Sang Hong. For instance, you have the Church of God Jesus Witnesses who believe in An Sang Hong as a prophet, right, and still hold to a lot of his teachings. The NCPCOG, which is run by An Sang Hong's son, also claims authenticity, that his father left him the rights to basically govern the NCPCOG. Then you have the WMSCOG, who claim that in a really weird twist of events, after An Sang Hong's death, all of a sudden General Pastor and Mother are now the leaders of the church, and now they can have authenticity and authority from An Sang Hong. And now there's a 4th group, which is Daniel Park, who is also splintering off from the WMSCOG, who is gathering hundreds of members from the WMSCOG in order to join his church. And so it just continues on and on and on. So you have to ask yourself, WMSCOG members, who is authentic? Here's a way to test. Why is it that the WMSCOG hasn't sued the NCPCOG or COG-JW for copyright reasons? Maybe it's because they actually don't have the rights to the copyright, so therefore they can't sue. So you have to ask yourself, if they don't have the rights to the copyright, and these other places do, these other organizations do, would that give credence then that these other organizations are actually authentic? And speaking of lawsuits, why is it that the World Mission Society Church of God sues former members who merely speak out about their experiences in the church? Why is it they sue members or even non-members who merely examine their truth, their doctrine, and point out the fallacies in that doctrine? It makes no sense. Doesn't the Bible say, bless those that persecute you? Doesn't the Bible also teach us that if your brother and sister in Christ drag you to court to sue you, that Satan already won? So again, why do you have to sue former members or even people who just merely speak out about your doctrine and point out fallacies in your doctrine? That is not what the Bible teaches. Also, when it comes to slander, in my opinion, what's more slanderous? Making up stories about how people left, slandering their name, making lies about them, or somebody who's on YouTube or another platform merely speaking out about the experiences they themselves went through and merely examining the doctrine with history, fact, and biblical teaching. Which one is the actual definition of slander in this case? I'll leave that up to you, the viewer. But slander is a lie. Slander can never be the truth. But in the WMSCOG, I would argue the definition of slander is a truth without the pre-approved church narrative that comes before it, in order to digest the truth as something that it's not. So you might be asking, why am I making this video now? Because this is a call to action. Enough is enough, guys. With all the shunning, with the lies, with the deception, their truth does not hold water. I have proved that time and time again in my videos on my channel. And the spiritual, mental, and emotional abuse that people have experienced in this place is not okay, and it has to stop. If this organization stopped playing this game and stopped ruining people's lives in this way, I wouldn't have to make a video. I wouldn't even have to have a channel. But I'm doing this because literally enough is enough, guys. When are you gonna stand up for yourself? When are you gonna stand up for your family, for the truth, for what is right, and for what you yourself know deep down what you need to do? You need to think about it. So yes, enough is enough.